Genghis Khan, Shadow of the Steppe, the untold story behind the world's greatest conqueror. Part 1. The Forbidden Tomb. What if the greatest conqueror in human history simply vanished? What if the man who built the largest empire the world has ever seen left behind no grave, no shrine, not even a single stone to mark his resting place? And what if disturbing his tomb would bring about the end of the world? These are not the plot lines of a fantasy novel. They are the legends surrounding Genghis Khan. In the year 1227, at the height of his power, the man who had united the Mongol steppe, crushed kingdoms, and reshaped the fate of continents, died. And yet, his death was only the beginning of a deeper mystery. According to ancient accounts, his funeral was unlike any the world had ever seen. The story goes that 10,000 horsemen escorted his body across the steppe. Wherever they passed, witnesses were slaughtered, villages erased, tracks wiped clean. When they reached his chosen burial ground, they killed the diggers, the guards, even themselves, until no one remained who could reveal the secret. Some say an entire forest was cut down to hide the grave. Others whisper that a river was diverted to flow over it, drowning the tomb beneath eternal waters. To this day, no one has found it. Not archaeologists, not treasure hunters, not even modern satellites scanning every inch of Mongolia. The mountain of Burkhan Khaldun, sacred to Genghis Khan, remains shrouded in mystery. And local tradition still warns, disturbing the tomb of the great Khan could bring disaster upon the world. Why such secrecy? Why would his people go to unimaginable lengths to erase every trace of his final resting place? Was it fear of grave robbers? A way to preserve his legend? Or was it something darker, something meant to keep his power sealed away forever? 8 centuries later, the shadow of Genghis Khan still lingers over history. His armies changed borders, his laws reshaped societies, and his very bloodline lives on in millions of people today. And yet, the man himself remains hidden, as if the earth itself has conspired to keep him from us. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps Genghis Khan was never meant to rest quietly in the ground. Perhaps his true legacy isn't buried at all, but written in the silence of the steppe, in the fear that still grips us when we ask, where is the tomb of the Khan? If mysteries like this capture your imagination, if you believe history is more than names and dates, that it hides secrets waiting to be uncovered, then you're in the right place. This is Obscure Truths. Subscribe now and join us as we peel back the shadows of the past. Because the tomb of Genghis Khan is only the beginning. Part 2. Child of the Steppe. Imagine a boy born into the endless winds of the Mongolian steppe. No palaces, no riches, no security. Only the cold bite of the wind, the hunger of an empty stomach, and the constant threat of rival clans waiting to strike. This boy's name was Temujin. The world would one day call him Genghis Khan. A childhood of hunger and fear. Temujin was born in 1162, near the sacred mountain of Burkhan Khaldun. His father, Yesugei, was a respected chieftain of the Borjigin clan. His mother, Holun, was strong-willed, stolen years earlier from a rival tribe and forced into marriage. But destiny would soon tear Temujin's fragile world apart. In 1171, when Temujin was just 9 years old, his father was poisoned by the Tatars, sworn enemies of the Borjigin. Suddenly, the boy who might have grown up as heir to a chieftain's camp became fatherless, abandoned, and vulnerable. Without Yesugei, the family's allies deserted them. Temujin, his mother, and his siblings were left to starve on the unforgiving steppe. They survived on wild roots, berries, and fish pulled from frozen rivers. This was no noble childhood. This was survival at its harshest, and it shaped him. It taught him that no one, not blood, not tribe, could be trusted blindly. It taught him that strength meant survival and weakness meant death. Brothers at War One story captures this brutal lesson. Temujin and his younger brother Kasar managed to catch a large fish, precious food for the starving family. But his older half-brother Begter seized it, claiming seniority. Temujin and Kasar would not accept this. Together, they ambushed Begter and killed him with arrows. Their mother, Holun, was horrified. She warned her sons, "If you fight each other, how will you ever face your true enemies?" But the lesson had already been burned into Temujin's heart. In a world without mercy, he could not afford hesitation. Chains and escape soon, Temujin's misfortunes deepened. The Tiichiad tribe, rivals of the Borjigin, captured him. They locked the boy in a wooden yoke, a heavy collar designed to humiliate and restrain. For days he was paraded like an animal, yet even in captivity he found allies. One night, a sympathetic guard released him. Temujin fled into the forest, hiding, starving, hunted. Somehow he survived, slipping back to his family with nothing but his will. It was the first of many times he would escape death, and each escape hardened him further. The birth of alliances. As he grew into his teenage years, Temujin began to understand that survival on the steppe required more than strength. It required loyalty, carefully chosen, ruthlessly maintained. At just 9 years old, he had been betrothed to Borte, daughter of a powerful Ongarat chieftain. Years later, when he came of age, he claimed her as his wife. Their marriage was not only a union of two people, but a strategic alliance with the Ongirat. Temujin also forged deep bonds of brotherhood with companions who would follow him for life. Men like Boorchu, who once helped him recover stolen horses, and Jelme, a warrior whose loyalty would later save his life. These friendships were not of blood, but of choice, and they would prove more enduring than family ties. The friend who became a foe. But perhaps the most fateful of his bonds was with a boy named Jamuga. As children, the two swore a sacred brotherhood oath of eternal loyalty. For a time, they dreamed of ruling the steppe together. But the steppe is a place where loyalty bends under the weight of ambition. In years to come, Jamuga would not stand at Temujin's side. He would stand against him. Their brotherhood would unravel into one of the greatest rivalries in history. A boy forged by the steppe. By his early teens, Temujin had already lived the kind of hardships most men would never endure. Hunger, betrayal, captivity, fratricide, exile. And yet, he endured. More than endured, he thrived. Every scar, every loss, every betrayal sharpened him into something harder than steel. He was no longer just a boy of the Borjigin. He was becoming something else, something the steppe had not yet seen. A storm was gathering, and in its eye stood Temujin, the boy who would be Khan. Part 3. Brotherhood and Betrayal. A Marriage and a War. By the late 1170s, Temujin was no longer a helpless boy. He was building alliances, one step at a time. The most important of these was his marriage. At 16, he rode to claim his betrothed, Borte, daughter of a powerful Ongarat chief. Their union was more than personal, it was political. The Ongarat clan was wealthy and influential, and with Borte at his side, Temujin gained legitimacy among rival tribes. But happiness on the steppe never lasted. Around 1180, disaster struck. A raiding party of the Merkit tribe, sworn enemies of Yasuge for abducting Holun years before, descended upon Temujin's camp. They captured Borte and carried her away. For Temujin, it was not just a personal tragedy, it was an insult to his honor, a challenge to his survival. To rescue Borte, he needed allies. Brothers in arms, Temujin turned first to Togril, Khan of the Kerit tribe, who had once sworn brotherhood with his father. He also called upon his childhood friend and sworn Onda, Jamuga. With their combined strength, Temujin led a campaign against the Merkit. The attack was swift and devastating. Borte was freed, yet she was pregnant, the child of her Merkit captor. When the boy was born, Temujin named him Joki and raised him as his own. But whispers of illegitimacy would haunt the boy for the rest of his life, and the rift it caused among Temujin's sons would echo long after the Khan's death. Still, in that moment, Temujin's star was rising. He had shown that he could command warriors, forge alliances, and avenge old grievances. The rise of Jamuga. But alliances on the steppe were as fragile as grass in the wind. In 1186, Temujin's followers declared him Khan of the Borjigin. He was ambitious, reforming his camp with strict discipline, rewarding merit over birth. To traditional leaders, this was revolutionary and dangerous. Jamuga, meanwhile, had gathered his own supporters. A year later, in 1187, Jamuga was elected Gur Khan, universal ruler, by a coalition of tribes. Their brotherhood shattered, friends had become rivals. The two armies clashed at the Battle of Dalan Baljut. Temujin's smaller, disciplined force faced Jamuga's vast coalition. At first, Temujin fought fiercely, but numbers told. His army was overwhelmed. Jamuga captured 70 of Temujin's men, boiled them alive, and left the survivors to scatter. For Temujin, it was humiliation. For Jamuga, it was triumph. For the steppe, it was the beginning of a blood feud that would not end until one of them was destroyed, forging a new brotherhood. Defeat did not break Temujin. It hardened him. He rebuilt his following, not with promises of wealth, but with a vision of order. He welcomed warriors of humble birth, men rejected by other tribes. He promised loyalty, protection, and reward for service, not lineage. This was revolutionary. In a world ruled by bloodlines, Temujin was building a meritocracy, and it drew to him some of the most talented warriors in history. Boorchu, his steadfast companion; Jelme, the fearless fighter who once sucked poison from Temujin's wound to save his life; Subede, just a boy, but already brilliant in strategy; and Jebe, once an enemy archer who nearly killed Temujin, but whom he spared and elevated as a general. Temujin did not just build an army, he built a brotherhood of loyalty stronger than blood. The fall of Jamuga. In 1201, Jamuga rallied yet another coalition, crowned himself Gurkhan once more, and prepared to crush Temujin. But fate had shifted. Temujin's army was smaller, but disciplined, loyal, and guided by cunning strategy. At the Battle of Chakhirmat in 1201 to 1204, Jamuga's coalition fell apart. Some defected, others deserted. Temujin's disciplined cavalry swept the field. Jamuga was defeated. Captured later by his own men and delivered to Temujin, Jamuga met a grim fate. Temujin refused to let traitors profit from betrayal. He executed Jamuga's captors, and then, in a gesture both cruel and merciful, granted Jamuga an honorable death without shedding blood. The brotherhood that had begun in childhood ended in silence, under the shadow of the Khan. A Khan forged in betrayal. By the early 1200s, Temujin had endured the trials of betrayal, defeat, and humiliation. He had watched allies turn into enemies and enemies into brothers. He had seen the fragility of loyalty and the brutality of ambition, but he had also learned the secret of power. Loyalty must be earned, fear must be cultivated, and mercy, when shown sparingly, could turn enemies into the fiercest of allies. The boy who once starved on the steppe was gone. In his place stood a leader who would soon be called Khan. And as the dust settled over the bones of Jamuga's dream, a new storm was rising. The world had yet to see the full fury of Temujin. Before we step into the moment that would change history forever, before Temujin is crowned Genghis Khan, pause for just a second. If this story has already pulled you in, if you want to uncover more than just history books and dates, if you want to explore the hidden shadows of the past, then this is the place. Subscribe to Obscure Truths and join us on this journey through forgotten mysteries and forbidden legends. Now, let us return to the year 1206, the birth of a Khan and the rise of a storm that would shake the world. Part 4, Rise of the Khan. The Kurultai of 1206. The year was 1206. On the banks of the Onon River, the tribes of the steppe gathered. Smoke rose from campfires, horses stamped the earth, and banners rippled in the cold wind. It was here that the great Kurultai, the council of Mongol nobles, convened to decide the fate of the steppe. After decades of bloodshed, betrayal, and shifting alliances, one man stood above the rest. Temujin, son of a poisoned chieftain, survivor of captivity, builder of a new order, had proven his strength. One by one, the chiefs bowed. And in that moment, Temujin was given a new name, Genghis Khan, universal ruler. The boy who once starved on the banks of the Onon had become master of the steppe, a new order. But Genghis Khan was not content with a title. He sought to remake Mongol society itself. Where the old order was ruled by clans and noble blood, he created a new system built on loyalty and merit. The military reform. His army was divided into units of tens, hundreds, thousands, and 10,000s, known as the decimal system. A man fought not for his clan, but for his unit, bound together by discipline and loyalty. This simple innovation turned a loose collection of tribes into a war machine. The Yasa. Genghis Khan issued a code of laws said to have been proclaimed beneath the eternal blue sky. Some rules were strict. Theft could mean death. Desertion was unforgivable. Others were visionary. Religious tolerance was enforced, women had rights to property and protection, and the weak could appeal directly to the Khan for justice. Yet much of the Yasa was never written down, whispered instead like a sacred mystery. Some historians believe large parts of it have been lost forever, leaving us with only fragments and legends. Religious tolerance. Genghis Khan declared that all faiths, Tengri, shamanism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, would be free to worship under his rule. On the steppe, where blood feuds often began with insulted beliefs, this was revolutionary. This was not just a chieftain's rule, this was the foundation of an empire. The man behind the Khan accounts from his contemporaries paint a man of contradictions. To his enemies, he was merciless, a destroyer who burned cities to ash. To his followers, he was just and generous, rewarding even common shepherds with command if they proved worthy. He demanded absolute loyalty, yet he valued talent above all, often elevating men of humble birth over noble lineage. Genghis Khan's charisma was undeniable. Warriors believed he carried the blessing of Tengri, the eternal blue sky. Legends say that when he prayed on Burkhan Khaldun, divine power touched him, marking him as the chosen ruler of the steppe. Trials by fire, yet his rise was not without resistance. Not all tribes accepted his rule. The Nayman, a powerful confederation to the west, resisted. In battles fierce and bloody, Genghis Khan crushed them, absorbing their warriors into his ranks. To the north, he subdued the forest tribes. To the south, he pressed against the Xixia kingdom. Each victory strengthened his legend. Each conquest brought more warriors into his orbit. But conquest was never enough. The steppe had been united before, only to fracture again. Genghis Khan sought permanence. He bound his men by law, oath, and fear. He built a system that would outlive him. Shadows of the Yasa. Even today, the Yasa remains an enigma. Chronicles speak of laws that forbade washing clothes in rivers, rules that demanded loyalty even to captured enemies, and codes of honor between soldiers. Yet much is missing. Was the Yasa a single written code, or a shifting body of decrees, enforced by memory and fear? Some whisper that fragments of the lost Yasa are still hidden, buried in forgotten manuscripts, or guarded in secret shrines. Others believe the true laws of Genghis Khan were meant never to be recorded, preserved only in the living memory of his people, and then deliberately erased. It is this uncertainty that gives the Yasa its ghostly power. Part history, part legend, part shadow. A Khan for the ages. By the end of 1206, Genghis Khan was no longer just a Mongol chieftain. He was the ruler of a nation forged in fire and blood, standing on the edge of something greater. His reforms had transformed scattered tribes into a disciplined army. His laws had created order where there was once chaos. His charisma had turned rivals into allies, and fear had made the rest submit. Yet even as he united the steppe, whispers spread. This Khan is not like the others. He is the chosen of Tengri. His shadow will not stop at Mongolia. It will fall across the world. And so the storm prepared to leave the steppe. The world beyond, China, Persia, even distant Europe, would soon learn the name Genghis Khan. Part 5, Storm Across Continents. The first winds, Xixia, 1209 to 1210. By 1209, the storm was ready to move beyond the steppe. Genghis Khan's first target was the kingdom of Xixia, a Tangut state in northwestern China. The Tanguts were wealthy, their cities fortified, their culture refined, but they were also vulnerable. Genghis led his warriors across deserts and mountains, pressing into Tangut territory. His cavalry, swift, disciplined, unstoppable, broke through their defenses. In 1210, Xixia submitted, offering tribute and military support. It was a message to the world. The Mongols could strike beyond the steppe, and kingdoms would bend. Clash with the Jin, 1211 to 1215. But Genghis Khan's ambitions reached further. To the south lay the mighty Jin dynasty, rulers of northern China. The Jin commanded vast armies, millions of subjects, fortified cities, and centuries of imperial tradition. Many believed the nomads of the north could never challenge them. In 1211, Genghis Khan crossed the Great Wall. His army, fewer than 100,000 horsemen, faced Jin forces that outnumbered them many times over. But numbers meant nothing against Mongol strategy. The Mongols perfected the art of the feigned retreat. They would charge, then scatter in apparent panic. The enemy pursued, eager for victory, only to be ambushed by hidden cavalry, encircled and annihilated. Again and again, Jin armies fell into the trap. By 1215, the Mongols had advanced deep into Jin territory, besieging Zhongdu, modern Beijing. After months of siege, the city fell. Flames consumed its streets. Chronicles tell of rivers of blood, corpses piled like mountains, terror that spread far beyond the walls. The message was clear. The Great Khan was not merely a steppe raider. He was a destroyer of dynasties. The Caravan and the Wrath, 1218. Even as he campaigned in China, Genghis Khan's eyes turned west. The lands of Khwarezm in Persia were rich in silk, spices, and trade. Hoping for peace, Genghis sent a caravan of merchants and envoys to establish diplomatic ties. But the Shah of Khwarezm, suspicious and arrogant, betrayed him. In 1218, the governor of Otrar seized the caravan, accused them of spying, and had them executed. Genghis Khan sent ambassadors to demand justice. The Shah had one of them killed, mutilating his beard, a final insult. It was a mistake that would unleash hell. The invasion of Khwarezm, 1209 to 1221. In 1219, Genghis Khan led his armies west in one of the most devastating campaigns in history. His forces, perhaps 150,000 strong, moved with terrifying speed across thousands of miles. Samarkand, once a jewel of Central Asia, fell within weeks. Mongols' feigned weakness lured the defenders out, then crushed them in open battle. The survivors were enslaved or slaughtered. Bukhara. When Genghis entered the city, he addressed its people in a mosque, declaring, "I am the punishment of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." The city was sacked, its wealth stripped, its citizens massacred. Urgenk, the richest city of the Khwarezm Empire, resisted fiercely. Genghis unleashed his fury. Some chronicles claim over 100,000 were killed, others say more. The city was left a ruin, its canals filled with bodies. This was more than war, it was annihilation. The Mongols erased Khwarezm from the map. The ghost army stories of the Mongols spread like wildfire. Refugees told of horsemen who appeared out of nowhere, struck with lightning speed, and vanished before dawn. Some believed they were not men at all, but demons riding the wind, and in a sense they were. The Mongol army moved faster than any before it, covering 60 to 70 miles in a single day. They carried spare horses, switching mounts in battle. Their communication relied on smoke, fire, and an early relay system that kept orders flowing across vast distances. To their enemies, they were not an army. They were a phantom storm. Terror as a weapon. Genghis Khan understood psychology as well as strategy. He knew that terror could conquer where armies failed. In city after city, he employed the same brutal logic. If you resisted, you would be destroyed, your people slaughtered. If you surrendered, you would be spared, sometimes even rewarded. The result was devastating. Word of Mongol cruelty spread faster than their horses. Cities surrendered at the mere rumor of their approach. The Khan wielded terror not just as brutality, but as policy. A legacy of fire and ash. By 1221, the Khwarezm Empire was gone, its Shah a fugitive dying in exile. From the Yellow River to the Caspian Sea, the shadow of Genghis Khan stretched unbroken. Yet, behind the victories lay rivers of blood. Entire populations were wiped out. Fields turned to wastelands. Cities that had thrived for centuries became dust. To some, he was a genius, a master of strategy, organization, and vision. To others, he was the scourge of God, a butcher unmatched in cruelty, the whisper of the eternal blue sky. But through it all, Genghis Khan claimed his power was not his own. He ruled by the will of Tengri, the eternal blue sky. When asked why he had conquered so much, he answered simply, "I have been sent as the scourge of God. The world is my inheritance." Whether divine destiny or ruthless ambition, the result was the same. The known world trembled. And yet, the storm had not ended. Even greater conquests lay ahead. But fate and death would intervene before the Khan could see them all. Part 6. Death and Shadow, the Final Campaign, 1226 to 1227. By the mid-1220s, the great Khan's empire stretched farther than any before him. Yet there remained one enemy who had defied him: Shishia. Once subdued, they had dared to withhold tribute, to challenge the will of the Khan. In 1226, Genghis Khan returned to the west of China. His armies swept through Shisha with ruthless precision, burning towns, crushing resistance. He swore to erase their name from history. But as the campaign raged, fate prepared its final ambush: the mysterious death. In 1227, Genghis Khan died, but the cause of his death remains shrouded in mystery. Some say he fell from his horse during a hunt. Others claim he succumbed to illness or wounds from battle, and legends whisper of a captured princess of Shishia who hid a blade in her robes and struck him down on their wedding night. No account is certain. The truth, like the man himself, vanished into legend, a funeral of silence. If his death was mysterious, his burial was even more so. According to chronicles, 10,000 horsemen escorted his body across the steppe. Any who witnessed the procession were slaughtered to preserve the secret. When they reached the burial site, the diggers, the guards, even the soldiers themselves were killed. Some say a forest was cut down to cover the grave. Others claim a river was diverted to flood it, burying the Khan beneath eternal waters. And so the tomb of Genghis Khan has never been found. Not by scholars, not by treasure hunters, not even by satellites sweeping across Mongolia. The sacred mountain of Burkhan Khaldun, where Temujin once prayed as a boy, still guards its secret. The curse of the Khan. Among the Mongols, a belief persists: if anyone disturbs the tomb of the great Khan, the world will collapse. The warning has endured for centuries, keeping would-be seekers away from the forbidden land. Even today, parts of Burkhan Khaldun remain untouched, protected by tradition and fear. His tomb, never seen, never found, has become a symbol of immortality. Not because it exists, but because it cannot be reached. The shadow that remains, in death as in life, Genghis Khan cast a shadow across the world. His empire continued to expand under his sons and grandsons, stretching from Korea to Hungary, from Siberia to India. It became the largest contiguous empire in human history. His legacy remains written in blood and stone: military genius, the decimal system, feigned retreats, rapid campaigns; law and order, the Yasa, lost to time but feared in memory; bloodline, genetic studies suggest millions alive today carry his mark. To some, he is a hero; to others, a monster; to all, he is unforgettable. The eternal shadow. 8 centuries have passed, but the name Genghis Khan still inspires awe and dread. His armies are gone, his empire dissolved, but his mystery endures. Because somewhere, beneath the grass of the steppe or the stones of Burkhan Khaldun, lies a tomb no one dares disturb. You can bury a man, but you cannot bury his shadow. The tomb of Genghis Khan remains hidden, his shadow still stretching across history. If you want to journey deeper into mysteries like this, don't let them fade into silence. Subscribe to Obscure Truths and step with us into the shadows of the past.